welcome to Past, Present, and Future, or Three Questions, the podcast where we learn about people's career journeys, how they got to where they are today, and where they'd like to go to next. I'm Parrots Cohen, a technologist and a wordsmith, and in my time in industry, I've been fortunate to work with both large companies and small startups alongside a number of very talented and hardworking individuals. This podcast is some of my conversations with them, where we learn about their journeys and what motivates them. If you'd like to be in the podcast, please feel free to reach out. You don't have to have a certain level of seniority or a number of years of experience. We all have something to share and learn from each other. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast or get involved in the collaboration, we'd also like to hear from you. All right, looking forward to our journey together as we learn more about each other and enrich ourselves in the process. Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. Today we have a fascinating guest for you all, and I will pass it over to him to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, I'm Idode Kerobo, and I am a founder slash product manager.
Thank you very much. We start the show really kind of with like the history. So what were kind of like the beginnings of your career, kind of leading you into product, and what was that journey like?
Um, Leading me into product, well, I guess like in the beginning, I actually was working in finance, corporate finance. In college, I majored in finance and math. I don't know, my older brother did finance. I knew I wanted to make money. I was pretty good at math, so wasn't too focused on school, but mostly I played football in college. I was mostly worried about that, but felt like a decent major, so I did that. And then my first job out of school was at Intel as a financial analyst, kind of just typical FP&A type role. Um, During that time, and I was always doing kind of like people say entrepreneurial type things growing up, whether that was selling clothes, selling sneakers, trying little businesses, things like that. So I don't know, I just felt like I wanted to do something different. And Intel is obviously hard tech, right? Working with silicon, selling microprocessors. And I was on the finance side. So I feel like I was twice removed from your typical kind of software or typical kind of internet type startup. Um, and I lived in Arizona, so I felt very far geographically, but yeah, I just kind of decided to learn how to code like in my free time. Like about a year into I started teaching myself how to code and doing that just nights and weekends. And from there, I built a couple products, like one app to find Black-owned businesses, it was a mobile app. I built a restaurant SaaS that I made it to pre-launch. I had one pre-launch customer before I decided to shut it down. But I learned a lot. Learning how to code was hard. Pre-AI was very different. Building products, selling, getting users was all sort of kind of like a learning experience. And that was like my intro to product before I even knew what product management was as at least a formal role or formal job.
And it's definitely like fascinating. I think especially in roles like product of how kind of many diverse kind of experiences kind of lead into that and kind of like this the kind of the multitude of experiences and hats you wear within product. So having the kind of that background and understanding everything from like the business realities to what it takes to develop a product is definitely integral in that regard. Um, so let's talk about what are you working on these days? Kind of moving it into the present. What is your current project?
Yeah, right now I'm working on a startup. It's super early in my kind of founder journey, as they say. I I quit. I was working at Meta as a product manager up until last October. Quit last October to go full time on a product I was working on free time at the time called Palette, Palate. It's an iOS mobile app to help people make their own custom podcasts from like research papers, articles, that kind of thing, their emails, that kind of thing. So I quit to work full time on that, and since then I've pivoted a handful of times. I've shipped like two or three products in the last 5 months. So yeah, I'm kind of a founder, kind of experimenting. A lot of the things that I'm interested in is consumer applications, AI-based consumer applications. So how does the LLM change the way we think, change the way we learn, change the way we do kind of our everyday things, um, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I think it's like an interesting point that you brought up earlier. Like in your earlier startups as well, there was kind of like going through the process, launching something, having one customer. But like within the kind of this new space of AI and the market being so new and they're kind of like being that early.com feel, it really is about that iteration, pivoting and getting that data, really kind of just constantly kind of rinsing and repeating in a fascinating way. Um, and I mean, kind of that initial product as well, kind of just seeing what you built around that is just the use case is definitely very, very useful and kind of utilizing AI in a way where it's kind of consumer focused as opposed to kind of using AI for the sake of AI.
Yep.
Um, so here comes like here's like usually the big question of the podcast, and it's almost kind of interview-esque, but I think it can be what you want it to be. What does the future look like? If you can kind of if you had the ability to kind of handcraft or project into the future, what your career, what your business, what you're building, what would you like to see? It could be 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Uh, Kind of the timeline is of your choosing.
What does the future look like? Um,
Like in
let's
regards to like your like the products you build or where you want to
yeah.
be, like kind of within yeah, in that future.
Yeah, I think the future, whether I would say the next 1 to 2 years, I'm hoping like obviously I have product market fit in something that I'm building and kind of a sustainable, growing sustainable product. Um, um, on the career front, or I guess, business side of things. Um, on the personal side of things, I don't know, I think about family a lot, so want to hopefully be a little bit closer to fam and things like that. So that's what comes to mind, honestly. What comes to mind. It's still super early, right? So like I don't even have an idea that I'm or a product that I'm like, oh, this is the one I'm like doubling down on, or this is app or at product market fit, right? I'm a couple of pivots in. So it's at a transitionary state. But hopefully in like 1 or 2 years we got something that's working.
And I think that's what's awesome. I think not having kind of a static definition of what that project is and kind of being in a state of constantly evaluating allows you to do things that are more impactful and to surprise yourself, kind of where that kind of thing that has that stickiness, where that comes from, kind of what that looks like. Um, One thing, just kind of you've worked at kind of within the startup space and worked at kind of a larger corporation like Meta. Um, what have you found kind of to be kind of the most valuable, useful thing kind of in working through products, whether in a small space or kind of a larger space, kind of I would say kind of like a mental shortcut of sorts or something kind of framework that you found very useful when you're evaluating, especially in a large corporation, you have a lot of stakeholders and they all kind of differing uh, kind of business objectives and ideas and kind of what has kind of been a useful product lens to kind of to find the signal in the noise, as they say.
Signal and noise. It's an interesting one. I think a couple ones, honestly. I think in the corporate context, it's very easy to kind of go through the motions, right? Like you're given a product, especially if you're on the more junior side. You're not establishing large scale vision. You're not establishing large scale strategy. Everything that you do is within context of the org or within context of, whatever team or group or product that you're already working on, right? So I think really understanding it sounds simple, but it's like actually pretty hard, like why someone would use this thing. And again, when you're working for a company, it's easy to feel removed from that because you're getting paid every couple of weeks, right? You're just doing the work, right? You're gonna get paid, you're gonna do the work, you're gonna do your best, right? But like why would a user uh organization or whatever product you're working on, why would someone use the thing? And why would they use that thing over whatever substitute, whether that's a direct competitor whether that's an indirect competitor. In some cases, with some products, you're competing with doing nothing, right? Like you're just trying to have them do something, or I don't know, automate something, do something, whatever. And that might not just be something they care about, right? And obviously in the startup space, it's even more important because it's very easy to build things that you think are cool or that you're interested in, but it's all about creating the user and having like dealing with like the market reality of like, hey, why would someone actually use this? Like, why would someone use this? Why would they come back to this? Do they actually come back to this? And really asking the hard question. So that's like the simplest razor. Like if I'm explaining what I'm doing to my mom, that's probably how I would put it. But there's a million ways or more like robust frameworks you can, you know, any product person, whether a founder or PM can think of. But that's the simplest way to think about it.
No, that's quite powerful. I mean, a lot of times I've been guilty of this myself. You build something because you want to build it, and even like if you're building like internal products, but making sure that you kind of have your listening to your stakeholders or listening to the market and really kind of finding something that is useful. And I mean, in essence, that's what product is. It's really kind of it's something that consumers interact with. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful having you on the show today. And I think our listeners and our viewers will learn a lot from your career journey and that startup journey. And I think it's definitely looking forward to see kind of how that all develops. And yeah, I think it's an amazing process. Just the startup journey, the product journey, development process is fascinating.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man. Thanks for the time.